That says recording.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join this session. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicola Taylor. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at ScotlandIS. And if you don't know who ScotlandIS are, we are the membership and cluster management organisation for the digital tech sector here in Scotland. So we're really pleased to bring you this session today in partnership with SCVO, bringing together practical insight for organisations across the third sector. We know that cybersecurity can sometimes feel like something that sits slightly outside of the kind of day-to-day priorities, particularly when you're working with limited resources, small teams, and have a reliance on volunteers in some instances. But the reality is that the risks are very real, and increasingly third sector organisations are becoming specifically targeted. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Amanda Stewart from Illuminate IT and David Lawrence from McGregor, both of whom work very closely with organisations like yours and to have a lot of real-world experience that they can share with you today. Before I pass over to our first speaker, Amanda, I'm going to briefly pass over to Alison Brogan, who's the Cyber Resilience Lead at SCVO. Thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Nicola. Hi, I'm Alison Brogan. I'm the Cyber Resilience Coordinator at SCVO. I coordinate a programme of work in partnership with the Scottish Government to help third sector organisations in Scotland stay safe online. We are part of the Cyber Scotland partnership, which brings together partners from all sectors across Scotland to boost cyber resilience for both organisations as well as individuals. But my role is really to provide free advice and support to help voluntary organisations on their journey to becoming more cyber resilient. We've got a cyber resilience page on the SCVO site, which I'll put in the chat in a minute. But basically, it's signposts to all the free resources and all the people that we work with, as well as obviously the ScotlandIS cyber directory for those that are looking for cyber services. Please feel free to have a wee look at that. Most of the things that we talk about today will probably be linked to on there. And also feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I would also say the website links through to the Cyber Scotland page. So for those of you who work closely with beneficiaries and are looking to help them stay safe online in their personal lives, have a look at the Cyber Scotland website, because there's lots of free advice and support on there specifically for individuals. But obviously today we'll be focusing on organisational resilience. So thank you to Amanda and David for doing this session. I'll hand over to them.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you. So today's session is obviously going to be recorded, as I'd mentioned, but just for anybody who has joined us more recently. There are two presentations that will be taking place today. I would ask that you keep questions to the end of both presentations so that we can make sure that we get through all of the information that we want to share with you. I would also ask that if you could drop those questions into the chat box and I can facilitate those for you at the end of both of the presentations. So, fully aware that nobody is here to hear me speak today. So without further ado, I will pass over to Amanda, who will kickstart the first of our presentations. Thanks very much, Amanda.
Hi there. Thanks, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Amanda Stewart. As Nicola has said, I run an organisation called Illuminate Technology. We help organisations such as yourselves with cybersecurity and IT support and everything IT. So today I'm just going to talk about how to sort of strengthen your everyday cyber skills. Some of it you will know, some of it may be new, but all of it is worth reiterating. So I'm just going to share my presentation and hopefully Nicola can tell me if you can actually see it.
Yes, we can see that. Thanks, Amanda.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay. So why does it matter? Why do we need to be worrying about our everyday cyber skills? So basically 1 in 5 UK organisations experience a cyber attack every year. Phishing is still the most common attack method. Ransomware affects fewer businesses and organisations, but it does cause the most damage. And email remains the main entry point, but it's also being supported nowadays by text and WhatsApp scams. And basic simple controls and staff awareness can prevent pretty much most incidents. So who do they target? They basically target those with the most permission in the organisation. So people who are busy, they often do it when people put out of offices on. So most scams are either urgent or asking people to do something very quickly and use a lot of social engineering. So payments, I think you'll know quite well. Oh, there's an echo. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh no, the echo's still there. Somebody need to mute.
That should be it now, Amanda, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah, so payments, messages and invoices are still the most common entry points. So, you'll probably have seen a lot of these coming through, new invoices with new account details, please pay this very quickly. So yeah, it does use social engineering. People like to be polite and do things when they're asked, but unfortunately, that's when the scammers attack the most. So how do they reach you? As I said, email is still number one, but text message, smishing is up and coming too. WhatsApp and social messaging. You'll probably have seen some of the things coming through on WhatsApp for buying vouchers for these voucher schemes that come through. So there's a lot of that coming through. Phone calls, that's called phishing. So people pretending to be somebody they're not. Fake websites and portals, fake QR codes, quishing. So there's a theme here that's all on ishing. Zoom and Teams attacks are becoming more common as well. AI deepfakes. And also, interestingly enough, third-party support scams. So some of the most high-level scams that have happened recently have been, pretending to be IT support companies that will come onto your machine and fix things. So those are also things you need to look out for. So yeah, so the QR codes are basically somebody puts a new QR code on top of one that should be there. And when you scan it, it goes to somewhere it shouldn't do. And the other one, the deep fakes. So I think there's a lot of hype out there about AI. AI is everywhere. And a lot of people are a bit scared that AI is increasing the threat landscape, which is 100% true. The deep fakes is quite interesting. There was an Australian organisation who basically the finance director had a conversation with somebody on a Teams call who he thought was a member of staff who wasn't actually, and they ended up paying out a huge amount of money. So basically somebody had taken a still shot of somebody on their social media and created a deep fake of that person, and it fooled other people in the organisation. So these are happening. They're quite rare, and they're obviously going up after much bigger organisations, but it is something to be aware that is coming up the line. So yeah, I think these are the most important things to think about. If a message asks you to act or do something really quickly, it could be an attack. And if something sounds too good to be true, it is. So urgency and too good to be true are the things to look out for. So yeah, the most common threats, as I said, are phishing, text messages, WhatsApp social media, invoice and payment fraud, password theft and account takeover. They pretty much come from phishing most of the time, and then ransomware moves on from that. So in terms of phishing, you've probably seen some of these. Your Microsoft account will be disabled. Unexpected attachments or links. One of the things to think about when you get a phishing attack, if there is an attachment within an email that you're not expecting, don't open it. If you do open it and there's a link within it, don't click on the link. It's always worth double checking from the person that it came from if it's actually true, but not through email. Make sure you phone them using a different method to authenticate. So this is quite an interesting one. It's quite hard to see, but this does look like it's come from Microsoft. But if you look incredibly carefully, you'll see it's actually an R and an N at the beginning rather than an M. That can be really easily overlooked, especially if you're in a hurry. But hackers are basically using different alphabets, and this is called a homoglyph, which is basically two characters very close together to make it look like something else. So yeah, they're using that and other alphabets. So for instance, this email looks fairly normal, but this has all been written in Cyrillic, or pretty much all of it has been written in Cyrillic. So if it comes in through a different alphabet, you know, some of the characters are very, very similar to our normal alphabet, and you can easily be fooled by that. So that's kind of the difference in the two different characters. Some of them are very close and almost impossible to tell apart. And yeah, these are the other things to look out for. Typo squatting and adding words in before or after the domains, so it looks like it is coming from PayPal or from Amazon or whatever. Similar looking domains using numbers instead of letters can also be a very common one, and also country specific. So if it's an organisation, it usually uses a .com, and it suddenly starts putting a UK at the end, it's possibly something to look out for as well. But as I said, phishing isn't just email. It comes in text nowadays from banks, HMRC. I think there was one out last year that a lot of people were caught out with because it mentioned a tax rebate, and who doesn't want a tax rebate? Sadly, it wasn't actually from HMRC. And the delivery companies one is incredibly common, especially around Christmas time, and WhatsApp messages as well. So they, as I say, they still go for the urgency and authority and the fear of consequences if you don't do something about it. Text message smishing, again, as I said, looks very similar. It feels personal. It arrives on a trusted device, so it arrives on your phone. So almost by default, you're more likely to trust it, and it encourages you to do something quickly. So I think we've probably all seen this one. I saw a really good response to this recently. So somebody had sent this to a woman who said, you know, actually, right, which one of my children is this? And they came back saying the eldest one. And she then went back and said, I don't have any children. You're a scammer. Go away. So, you know, you can return, you can engage in conversations with these people, but generally the advice is not to. Yep, so other things, fake suppliers or clients, urgent payment requests, verification codes or QR scans happen in WhatsApp as well. You'll see a lot of things on Facebook that are copy and paste this. This is the way to stop Facebook getting access to your information. All of this kind of thing is just nonsense and a scam, so be aware of them. So these are a couple of instances. M&S never give away free food, so neither do Asda. Be very wary of all of these things. So invoice and payment fraud is actually one of the most costly. Criminals monitor your email or messages, and then often they'll wait till you put an out of office on to go away on holiday, and they'll intercept it and put an invoice in there that goes to their own bank account, or they'll send something saying, here's our updated bank details, please pay this urgently, and then the money is gone. It quite often happens, not just with email, but with WhatsApp nowadays. So similar to something like this that you'll see. And this is using the kind of the zero pay, which we're all kind of used to seeing. But if it's not something that you recognise or a supplier that you've used before, always be very careful. So going on to ransomware. So ransomware is basically where your systems are locked and you're asked to pay for the data to get back. Often comes in on a link or attachment through a phishing email or a message. Basically, it stops your whole business and it's incredibly stressful. So you do not want to see something like this coming up on your screen. The problem with paying it is you're basically paying for more organised crime. But as long as you have a backup that you can restore, there's no reason for you to actually pay it. The problem is if you pay it, they may not give you your data back, or they may keep a copy of your data to come back and say to you in the future that they're going to put it out on the dark web. So there are lots of reasons not to pay it. And as long as you have a backup that is tested, because lots of people do backups, but not always test them, there is no reason to pay that. So password and account attacks, these are really common and really easy for attackers to get into your systems. And the reasons that it happens is because people reuse passwords, they share passwords, and they don't have multi-factor authentication set up. The really easy fixes for these are password managers and having MFA on absolutely everything that you possibly can. It's the first line of defense for all of these attacks. And yes, so the common thread is people. We are the common thread. Practically all of them rely on human nature. They exploit our trust and our fear of getting it wrong, and that's how they do it. Pressure is always a warning sign. So really, staff are your strongest defence. If you can train your staff, phishing click rates drop by 50 to 70%, and trained staff are 3 times more likely to report suspicious emails quickly. So early reporting is often more important than perfect prevention. One-off annual training has pretty limited effect. It has to be short, role-relevant training, and it leads to a sustained reduction in click rates, much more than sort of annual. And it means that staff will be more likely to challenge things that they see, and it is a cultural change. Staff will see themselves as defenders of your data, which is exactly what they are. So yes, as attacks get smarter, untrained humans become the weakest link. And with AI, this will accelerate beyond all means. So training for modern threats, show your staff what email phishing examples look like, how they can be scanned by text message, WhatsApp impersonations, and what to do if something feels wrong, so who they can report to and who they can tell. So the most important thing in this is creating a cyber culture, and it starts from the top. It has to start from the leadership of the organisation. It encourages people to ask questions and removes any blame, because this genuinely can happen to anyone. And yeah, it has to start from the top. So if you in your organisations can just give the teams these kind of rules, stop and think, never rush any payments, have another way of verbally checking that it is actually what you're supposed to be doing, never rush them, have someone else within the organisation to look over it, never share codes or passwords. You've got password managers now where you can actually safely encrypted systems where you can share passwords, but no more post-its, no more writing things down or sending them over email, and report suspicious messages immediately. So yeah, so these are practical checklists in your organisation. Train staff regularly, enable MFA everywhere. I can't stress that enough. Backup data and test, because as I said, if you haven't got it tested, you don't know if it's going to work in the event of a ransomware attack. Lock down your payment approvals, have a 2-step way of approving payments. Verify bank changes verbally, so that is not phoning the number on the email that you got through, but actually contact the supplier through their website and speak to them that way. And invest in good email filtering, because it will take a lot of the phishing attempts out. It won't protect you completely, but it will take out a lot of the stuff that's in there that shouldn't be getting through. So cybersecurity is about confidence, it's not fear. You need to talk in your organisation about near misses and lessons learned. It's all about the culture. It's constantly talking about it and making people more confident on what to do if something goes wrong. So yeah, stop, check and verify. So the other things to mention are that you're not on your own out there. There are lots of organisations that are there to help you. And I've got one that I'm going to show you, which is hopefully this will play and you'll be able to hear it. If not, Nicola, you can shout and I can share the link. But this is just a really good example of what O2 and Virgin are doing. Everybody talks about AI being, increasing threats exponentially, but this is showing how we are actually using AI to fight cybercrime. So yeah, really like that one. It's a good way that we're using AI to fight crime. Other things that you can consider are cyber essentials. It's a government-backed scheme to increase cybersecurity within the UK, and its controls prevent about 80% of common opportunistic cyber attacks. It forces good cyber hygiene, not just policy, and it reduces the kind of low-hanging fruit that attackers rely on. It creates consistency and discipline and supports, but doesn't replace staff awareness. It strengthens supply chain trust because you can basically put it on your website and let people know that you have that. And it prepares organisations like yourselves for tougher regulatory environments. And it's achievable and cost effective. But what it doesn't do is make you secure. It doesn't stop all attacks, and it's not a substitute for staff training or incident response or a cyber culture. But it's a good starting point. Cyber insurance is a good thing to have. If you have things like MFA, you have to have things like MFA or you won't get insured. A lot of insurance companies are being very strict now about what you need to have for them to allow you to get insurance or to pay out if you were in an attack. So things like staff training, MFA, backups are prerequisites, and they are getting tougher every year because they don't want to be paying out their insurance companies. So it's worth having. The good thing about cyber insurance is it doesn't just pay out if there's a financial loss, but it'll also pay. A good policy will also pay for helping you get an IT, paying for an IT company to come in and sort it out for you, and some of them will also help pay towards sort of PR for any reputational damage as well. So it's definitely worth looking at. And the other thing is the NCSE has a really good cyber toolkit, which is free, and it's giving you some sort of basic steps to go through for different sizes of organisations. So there's lots of help out there. Obviously, David and myself are also out there to help, but there's an awful lot of free help, and ScotlandIS is obviously a good place to go for as well. So that's me. I can hand it back and stop sharing.
Thank you, Amanda. That was brilliant. Thank you. There are a couple of questions in the chat already, which just a reminder to everybody, I will ask all of the questions after both of our presentations. So if anybody else has any questions that they would like to ask Amanda specifically, you can start popping those in the chat now. And once all the presentations are finished, I will facilitate those at the end. Our second presentation of today will be from David Lawrence from Grant McGregor. He's going to chat to us about asset management. So over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just, can you see that okay?
Can't see anything yet, David.
You see it now?
No, still can't see anything. Something's happening now. There we go. Can see it now.
Let me just, give me 1 second. You just see these slides, you can't see my notes.
Just your slides, you're fine.
Perfect. Sorry,
Thank
I'm doing it on a Mac today. Thank you, Amanda. That was really good. And there were some really good points here about phishing. And I think that is one of the most important aspects of cyber security is the invested in good phishing and cyber awareness security training. And actually it's pretty inexpensive as well. So I think that's if you're going to take anything away from today, and certainly from Amanda's talk, I think phishing is, and security awareness is very important. So I'm David Lawrence. I'm work for a company called Grant McGregor. We're a certified cyber essentials body, and we also have cyber advisors, which is a new scheme from the NCSC released last year. So it's about giving back 30 minutes of security advice to all organisations in the UK. And actually, they've just mandated that that's free. So there's a number of us across Scotland and the UK. So if you go onto the NCSE website, you can find a cyber advisor near you. And as I said, it's free. So that's really good. So you can get some good security consultancy for free. Amanda's already covered some of these points, so I won't do them in depth. But look, the whole point of cyber resilience is to help prepare charities to protect their personal data, donor information, and critically your reputation. You know, we don't talk enough about that. If you get or have a security attack, there's a lot of anxiety that goes with that, but critically it is the reputation which can be harmed, which is really unfortunate and causes a lot of anxiety. So Amanda and I are just going to cover some basic control mechanisms that you can put in place to help protect your reputation. The Scottish Charities, there was a stat last year that 30% are experiencing breaches and attacks. That's because, unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time and effort and investment to secure your organisations. So unfortunately, it's low-hanging fruit, and the threat actors are actively targeting your sector, which is a shame because obviously you're trying to help the best in society. You have limited resources, but there is some very straightforward controls that you can put in place. And one of those controls is IT asset management. But let's just take a step back, because that sounds quite boring and maybe difficult to consume. When we're asked by third sector organisations what is a good starting point for your security resilience path, we always say that actually the best place to start isn't the how to secure your infrastructure. It's actually understanding what to protect first, because you only know what to protect when you know. So you only know how to protect when you know what you have in place. So actually a very good starting point is the understanding your computers, your smartphones, your software, and your cloud services. And that can be made a little bit more challenging in the third sector because, as we found, and as you know, you're using volunteers' computers, stakeholders' computer systems, and you have your own computer systems that you procure as well. So you don't necessarily have oversight of those volunteers' computer systems or the stakeholders' computers. So you don't need to have control over them, but you do need to have oversight, and that's a critical aspect of security hygiene. And what I mean by that is, if there is an attack, if there is ransomware, to help you protect against that is understanding what you have in place and what other people have in place to actually access your email and your data, because critically that's what we're trying to protect here, is your email and data, and not have that being attacked or put onto the dark web by threat actors holding you ransom. So we want to know the computer systems, the software, and critically now the cloud services that you have in place. So there's some very practical ways that you can start this project. I would suggest that you have a very basic Excel spreadsheet that lists the hardware that you're using, and you can break that down by who owns the hardware. So it might be your organization, it might be a volunteer, it might be a board member, it might be a stakeholder. But if they're accessing your system, you want to put their name on a spreadsheet. Then you want to put on that spreadsheet the computer operating system. Is it Windows 11, and let's hope it's not a Windows 10 or a Windows 7 or Windows XP, but just keeping an inventory of the operating system and preferably the version number of that as well. And then who's it assigned to, and that would allow you to react and manage these devices when and if you need to. And let's include the smartphones, so iPhones or Android phones. If they're accessing your email, you really want to put that onto the asset management list as well. So that simple spreadsheet of who has who and what type of smartphone do they have access in your email or data. And that's a really good step to actually give you the oversight that you need for everybody that's working with your organization who is accessing your data and your email. The same is true of software. You'll probably have 5 to 10 bits of software that you're actually using in your organization. So either on that same spreadsheet or a different tab or a different spreadsheet, just again highlight the software that you're using. So highlight whose computer it would be installed on, what type of software you're using. Is it Microsoft Office? Is it Adobe? Is it sector-specific software? Is it an account system that you might have installed like Sage? But again, just on that spreadsheet, highlighting the software in your organization. And this, again, just the oversight, not the control. You should ask those same questions from the volunteers and your stakeholders, asking them what type of software and preferably the version numbers of that software as well. So you're building up an understanding of the devices and the software that your people and your volunteers and your stakeholders are using when they're accessing your data. And lastly, cloud applications. And what do we mean by that? So if you're using Microsoft Office 365, Google Cloud, if you're using Xero account system or Sage Cloud, if you're using social media accounts, X or Facebook, whatever third sector specific cloud application that you're using. And what we mean by cloud is something that's not installed in your computers, but it's run from an internet browser. Again, this is going to be a third tab or a separate spreadsheet labeled cloud applications. And the reason you need to do that is it's going to give you, again, oversight of when and if something bad happens to your organization. You'll be able to react a lot quicker. and you'll be able to put protection measures in place, which we'll come to in the next slide. So it just, as we said initially, you only know how to protect your systems when you know what you have in place. So very simple control processes to put in place. And actually, Cyber Essentials, if anybody's gone through that exercise, the first part and the major part of Cyber Essentials is understanding your scope of your organization, what is and what isn't in scope in Cyber Essentials. And then the next part is just your asset management. So knowing what you have in place that accesses your data and your email. So some very good place to start is just, it sounds boring, but just asset management. And just moving just a little bit further forward, your security updates and patches. So you now know what you have. This is a little bit about how to help you protect and do some basic controls. When a software vulnerability is discovered within an operating system like Windows 10, Windows 11, Mac operating systems, Android operating systems for phones, or iOS operating systems for iPhones, they're made public. And once they're made public, the threat actors then are aware of those vulnerabilities as well. And what happens when those vulnerabilities are made public? Software manufacturers like Microsoft or Apple or Adobe or other software manufacturers will release an update, and that in the industry is called a patch or a security update. And what you want to do is make sure that everybody now is aware of that security vulnerability. You want to be able to download and install that update or that patch as quickly as humanly possible onto those affected computers. So going back into that first step, you now know what you have. If you have Windows 11 computers, and you then know that actually some of these security updates will need to be applied to those Windows 11 computers. The easiest way around updating all your computer systems is to make sure that you have automatic updates applied. So Microsoft and Apple make that relatively easy. Microsoft is a little bit easier. So Microsoft, if you click on any major operating system for Microsoft, it will update your operating system. But critically, if it's a laptop, sometimes those security updates will only take effect when you reboot your computers. So it's very good practice that if you do have auto updates running on your computer systems, on your Microsoft computer systems, that you at least switch the laptop on and off or reboot it once a week, or certainly once a fortnight. If it's an Apple Mac computer, the updates will be applied and downloaded to the Mac if you have auto updates enabled. But Mac operating systems tend to prompt you for those updates. So you got to just get into the habit of making sure that you're applying those updates as well. And sometimes that can be a little bit difficult because you're all trying to do your day work and updates get in the way of things. But again, please apply those updates and make sure that you're rebooting your Mac computers, your Mac laptops, certainly within, I would recommend within 7 days. Android phones and Apple phones, iOS phones, they require the person, the user of those devices, to make sure that automatic updates are applied. But you actually have to go into those devices themselves to apply the updates. So it's under settings in general, and then apply those updates and again reboot the phones. They're not so automatic. So again, you're just making sure that your operating systems on those phones and Android phones are always up to date. But that's a little bit more of a human intervention. And critically, as we said before, you only have so much control over your asset management, because some of these computer systems, some of these phones are going to be for volunteers and your stakeholders and your board members. So it's not controlling these devices, but it's actually recommending best practices to all these people that are accessing your data. So making sure that they're applying the updates to their computer systems, making sure that they're applying their updates to their phones as well, would really go a long way to give you a good security hygiene. Latterly, there is some software which will not ever have automatic updates. So going back to your asset management that we talked about earlier, for your software list, you will have the majority of that will be able to apply automatic updates. There will be some in there that you might identify that you can't apply automatic updates. So it would be, the onus would be on you or your IT people to talk to those software providers to make sure that when there is a software update, or certainly a security update to those software, that you are applying that manually, or your IT people are applying that manually. Thankfully, that's less common these days. Most software manufacturers do a good job of automatically updating software. But again, just making sure, especially older charitable third sector applications do need to be manually updated. So that's me. If you can take two things away from this, just good asset management and an overview of who and how they're accessing your data. If you don't have direct control over those computers, you might get a little bit of pushback from some people if they're using their own computers. But again, you're helping protecting your data and your email, but you're also helping them protect their computer system as well. So don't be worried, just to push back a little bit and say that, you know, we're all trying to protect each other, and we just want to make sure that we know what we have and how best to protect it. So hopefully that was useful.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So we do have a question in the chat box already, which is for Amanda, and it's asking, what's the rough cost of Cyber Essentials?
So yeah, so like David, we are a Cyber Essentials certifying body as well. There's two levels to Cyber Essentials. So there's a Cyber Essentials and there's a Cyber Essentials Plus. So the Cyber Essentials is the more cost-effective one. It's basically either yourselves or your IT people will fill it in. It's a questionnaire where you just go through and add you know, what you do for each different section, and then it's marked by one of our assessors, and you're either told to go back and change some things, or you get a pass, you get your certification. So that the basic starts at about £300. I mean, everybody has slightly different prices, but it starts around about that price. And then the Plus is audited by a third party, so they're not just taking your word for it or your IT company's word for it. It's properly audited. They'll come onto a couple of machines and check it out, and that is a lot more expensive. So you're looking at, you know, depending on the size of your organisation, certainly, you know, 1,500 to £2,000 at least. So, but it all depends on the size of your organisation. So you probably need to get in touch with somebody and find a proper cost for your size.
Thank you, Amanda. Another question here that's just come in around insurance. Can you please offer advice on suggestions of insurance companies and a likely cost of what that would be? I don't know whether or not either of you know, but
yeah, well, we can't recommend insurance. We're not insurance brokers.
Yep.
I don't really get very excited about insurance particularly, but with Cyber Essentials, there's a basic policy that comes with that. But if you want something a bit more robust, you need to go to a proper broker and find out. But it's not as expensive as you think it would be, so it's worth having a look. And if you can't afford, you know, to go to a broker and get a price, then the one that comes with Cyber Essentials is a good start.
David, anything else to add?
Yeah, I think that's some good points from Amanda. I would just add that Cyber Essentials provides £25,000 worth of cyber insurance, but critically, Cyber Essentials will give you an incident response team so from the insurance company. So I think when you're talking about cyber insurance, the critical aspect of cyber insurance, do you know what it's like? Car insurance, home insurance, you just want to be able to phone somebody up when something goes wrong, and you know that somebody has your back. So cyber insurance is a really good way to get that incident response from a professional team that the insurance company will bring in. As for cost, it's normally an add-on to your indemnity insurance for organizations. So I would say, yeah, it's going to be, depending on your size of an organization, your turnover, and the amount of people you have, between £200 to £200 to a grand roughly normally. But I think I would always highlight that it's one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah, I need to definitely have to check the wording as well, because some will give you a cover for IT, and some will also give you cover for the amount of downtime that you're down, so the loss of productivity. So it depends on what you want covered. It's really difficult for us to advise on that. But yeah, some are add-ons to, as David says, your liability insurance, but some brokers specialise on cyber security. So it just depends on what you want, how far you want to go with that, really.
Okay, thank you. Alison, I see that you popped your camera on. Do you have anything to add to the back of that question?
I was just going to mention, Amanda had a link earlier to the Cyber Action Toolkit, and that's very much been created for those organisations that are quite small, probably really small, and are looking to start the journey. So I would say if the Cyber Essentials piece feels a bit overwhelming, have a look at the free Cyber Action Toolkit and run through that first. And the idea is it's the first step of the journey for those that are smaller, and they may well go into Cyber Essentials later, but it's not necessarily for everyone, I would say. And I think that's kind of why they brought the Action Toolkit out. So for those that are maybe thinking Cyber Essentials is a bit much for them, I would check that out as a starter for 10.
Okay, thank you. And what we'll do is when we share the recording link with everybody, we'll put the link to that toolkit in there as well, so you've got easy access to that. So another question in the chat here, slightly more technical one. It's not directed at anybody, so feel free to jump in, whoever would like to answer this one. Where's the best place to get security advice about the back end of a WordPress website? We've consistently had unusual amounts of attack bot activity. They're not getting through, but they're using up the space we have on our hosting package, and the web designer is a little bit flummoxed. Is that something either of you can help with?
I mean, I would say that in my experience, certainly with WordPress, number one is, and it's the obvious, but you want to make sure that it's on the latest version of WordPress, so it's always up to date. And number two is that if you are using, so that would cover you certainly with any security vulnerabilities. If there is any third-party modules built into WordPress, again, you just want to make sure they're certified WordPress. And then again, they can be updated. As for where to get advice, I mean, you're looking at probably getting your website pen tested, and then they would offer the right advice.
Yeah, I think the other thing is possibly go back to your hosting provider. The hosting provider should have some level of security on there, so it might be worth having a conversation with them.
Thank you. So hopefully that helps and starts to resolve the problem for you. Thank you for asking. Anybody else have any other questions? Now's the time. We've got about 9 minutes left before the end of the session. So if anybody does have any more questions for David or for Amanda or for Alison for that matter, then please feel free to pop those into the chat box just now. I have a couple of questions, if that is okay, whilst we wait for other participants to pop their questions into the chat box. So obviously for our third sector organisations, quite a few of them use volunteers. That can often mean that it's their own devices that are actually being used as part of the work that they're carrying out. How do you go about, ensuring, cyber resilience with things like that?
I can jump in and then and this is the same challenge that businesses have as well, or commercial organizations, because a lot of commercial organizations will use contractors. So this, I mean, it's more kind of unique to third sector, but the hard thing is that nobody wants to be told, volunteers or contractors, that their computer systems aren't good enough or protected. And as we were saying earlier, it's having that oversight. And I think the way you always start the conversation is that, you're all using technology so that it's in both the parties' interests to protect each other. I use the example of, like, you wouldn't share a handkerchief. If somebody's blowing the nose with a handkerchief, you wouldn't want to necessarily share that with somebody else. And
Yeah.
Using somebody else's laptop that you don't have any oversight with into your own Office 365 or SharePoint, whatever, it's not really best practice. What you really want to do is just have that initial conversation. Look, we're trying to make sure that when you're working for us, and you may be working for other people or other organizations, that you have a good level of security on your own computer. You can go to the nth degree on this, but critically, you want to make sure the operating system is up to date and supported. You want to make sure that there's a good ransomware protection on that computer, not just antivirus. You want to make sure there's good ransomware protection. And you want to make sure that computer system has automatic updates switched on. The last one, as Amanda knows probably as well as I do, you don't want to be logged into that computer system as the administrator. So when we all get new computers, or you get a home computer and you install it for the first time, you will be an administrator of that computer. So that means you can do anything on that computer system. If a threat actor gets onto that computer, well, guess what? They can do anything on that computer as well. So what you should do is make sure that you create another user account on that computer system as just a normal standard user, and you're logged in as that standard user all day, every day. And then when you need to install software, the computer is going to prompt you for the administrator username and password. And that way, and so those controls are, all in Cyber Essentials, but such critical and quite straightforward controls to put in place onto your own computer systems, but also onto a volunteer's or a third-party computer system.
Yeah,
Amanda, I agree
with that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's three things for me. There's a lot of organisations just make the internal decision that they're not going to allow third parties or trustees to use their own devices, and they invest in their own equipment, which is the kind of belts and braces. Yep, that's absolutely secure. That's the way to do it. That's not always doable for smaller organisations that don't have the budget. So the sort of bring your own device is always a bit of a thought. So we kind of advise at that point, there's a policy goes in place where they're told that if they're accessing cloud information, especially things like Microsoft 365, that they don't download any data onto their own machines. And if they're using the web browser, then they sign out at the end of each session. But that really then is putting the onus on that person to adhere to those policies. So the sort of third option is to have a tool that will only let equipment get into your Office 365 if they reach a certain level of technical spec. So they have to have, as David says, the antivirus up to date, the patches up to date. And if they don't, then they just don't get access to it, and it just basically tells them that they can't access that organisation's data. So there's different levels to it, but yeah, it's always a difficult one for third sector because budgets are always sticky.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Alison, anything you would like to add to that response, or I've got another question here to ask.
No, I think they covered it all.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So conscious that we are moving very close towards the end of our session, but I do have one final question in the chat, which should, I think, be a quick one. So I'm going to ask that quickly before I wrap things up. So David, I think based on the fact it's around asset management, I'm going to direct the question to you. So how often should we check / update the information about our IT assets?
I think a good practice is, I mean, if somebody is onboarded or offboarded, you know, so that could be a member of staff or a volunteer decides not to be a volunteer or becomes a volunteer, you know, you want to then update that asset list. But thereafter, you know, once every 3 months, once every 6 months is fine. I think if you know there's a change, that's when you update it. But critically, that you've got it in your calendar to do it 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
can I just add something? Sorry, Nicola.
Of course.
The toolkit that Alice and Amanda recommended, I think, is really powerful, and that's really good. The NCSE are pushing the cyber advisor scheme, and as I said, it's free at the moment. So you get half an hour with any of the UK cyber advisors, and it's ideal for third sector. So if you go onto IASME's website or NCSE website or Google Cyber Advisor, I think there's 100 or so in the UK, and you get 30 minutes of time and it's free, and they will work with you to advise you of the first step before Cyber Essentials. So it's a great thing. It's free, so why not use it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, David. We are now very close to the end of the session. We have 2 minutes to spare. So if there's any further questions that anybody would like to ask, we would be more than happy to put you in touch with Amanda or David, and happy to facilitate that after the session for you. We will share the recording with you once that is ready. We'll drop in the NCSE toolkit there as well. I'll also drop in some information around the Cyber Advisor scheme in case anybody would like to make use of that as well. And as long as David and Amanda are happy for us to do so, we shall also share the slides with everybody. Just want to say a huge thank you to both Amanda and David for the presentations and for taking part in the session with us today. And a huge thank you to all of you for joining us. Certainly there's lots of thank yous and good information coming through in the chat there. So it looks like it's been very well received. But a huge thank you to everybody. Like I say, we'll get all that information shared with you as soon as it is ready. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks.